And we are now joined by Udi Goren. His cousin, Tal Haimi, was kidnapped on October 7th by Hamas and murdered in captivity. Udi, I have no words of consolation to help after hearing that. I want to know what your reaction was to Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's statements last night when he said that there would be no giving in to pressure when negotiating with Hamas until this is over.
First of all, thank you for having me. And I'd just like to correct, we've just found out that my cousin Tal was actually murdered on October 7th and kidnapped to Gaza as a body. So he's still a hostage, only that now we know that he was taken dead. And as far as Prime Minister Netanyahu's words, is that I would like to ask him or ask you to ask anyone that is representing the government if they have finally decided they're going to sacrifice the remaining living hostages. If they are finally there and they're willing to completely give up their lives and they do not care about the hostages and the people that they themselves have neglected to defend on October 7th, because this is what he's saying. Because if he's playing chicken with Sinwar and what's on the line is the lives of the hostages, right? If Sinwar says without stopping the fighting, there will be no deal, and Netanyahu says there will be no deal without the hostages, then they're playing chicken. And what the stakes are the lives of the hostages. Now, we know for a fact, and the past week have proven it for absolutely certain, that every day that passes, more hostages die. We know this. A military operation does not bring the hostages back alive. It doesn't. Just look at the past week. We have realized that at least 10 people that went into Gaza alive, we know it's documented. They've gone into Gaza alive. They are now dead. So we're bringing back coffins instead of living hostages. So with all what Raphael had to say prior to myself, with all the big plans that the government has, he didn't mention one word about the hostages. And everything that his plan is reiterating is that the government is clearly saying, we do not care about Israeli civilians taken hostage. This is the meaning. Because if the military pressure is there to bring Hamas back to the table, it has done so. It has done so once. And then now, right now, as you and I are talking, there is a deal on the table, only dependent on the Israeli government. It's only awaiting Netanyahu's yes. And as long as there is no yes on the deal and the ground invasion continues, this means that the Israeli government keeps choosing to kill our enemies over saving our own civilians.
Udi, you touched on a point that I wanted to address, because so many of us here in Israel had been hoping, praying, had been really believing that the military operation could free people that were held by Hamas. This past weekend, just the reaction, seeing those 3 people who had managed to escape on their own, only to get gunned down in this mistaken. What goes through your mind when you see that?
It's ridiculous. I'm sorry, but it's just ridiculous. We're not in a video game. This is not Rambo. This is real life. And in real life, if you just go through the statistics, just the statistics of trying to rescue hostages, you would see that the odds are awful. Because whenever you try to go into a room when someone is pointing a gun to someone else's head, they have far longer than the people who are going in to just shoot the hostage. And the odds are, the statistics are, that to start with, 20% of hostages are executed in those attempts. So to start with, if we're even considering bringing out the hostages in a military operation, we know that 4 out of 5 is the most we can get, instead of going for a deal. Because when we went for a deal, 81 out of 81 hostages were taken out alive and well. So it's even ridiculous to consider it. Aside from that, we know that they're being injured by the bombings. We know that when Hamas has no food in Gaza, the hostages have no food. The sanitation is awful. They're being taken from place to place under bombing while Israel is bombing, they're being chased. I'm sorry, they're being taken through Gaza, and now this horrific horror of people that who knows how they were able to escape. We will never know, because they were shot dead by mistake. And I want to make sure that people understand the families have absolutely nothing to say to the soldiers in terms of there's no blame. We're not upset. We know this is an impossible situation. It's just absolutely impossible to manage in these kind of circumstances. But of course, when there's such fighting, then this is bound to happen. I mean, Israeli soldiers are getting hurt by our own people as well, because this is such a dense and awful place to fight in. So the only way, the one and only way to bring the hostages back, and there is no other option, is by going for a deal. If the military pressure is meant to bring Hamas back to the negotiation table, it has happened. It's happening right now. Right now, it is possible to get to another deal.
I think everyone is hoping and praying, Udi, that there may be something that's possible to bring Israel's children back home. Thank you very much for being on our show and walking us through this
Thank you.
painful ordeal.